Hi there. Welcome to or welcome back to Tiff Reads Books. I read books and I talk to you about them. I'm supposed to be doing my review today, but given the world, I'm gonna do something different. And I do want to start off by saying the same thing here that I said on my Bookstagram this week. If you voted for him, if you voted for the Orange Menace, if you voted for a felon, if you voted for an absolutely terrible human being, I don't want you here. Okay? That's it. My content is not for you, and I don't want it to be for you. So I'm starting off with that, and I don't really care to hear your opinion on it. So I won't be engaging in the comments with anything that is pro him. I will be removing those comments. So I am saying that right now because I have the privilege to say that. So this is my YouTube channel. These are my thoughts, my opinions. I don't need to placate anybody. So if you don't think that that is a valid stance, you're also welcome to leave. So, and I'm not sorry if this comes off as aggressive because I am in the mood to be a fucking problem. I'm very tired of being kind to people for this who are not kind to anybody else, okay? I am in general a very kind and forgiving person. I'm a people pleaser. I like to get along with people. I don't like conflict. And that has resulted in stress. So I don't want to placate. And saying that, if you are one of those people, you're gonna hate this book list. I am about to give you a book list of things that I find very satisfying to read. This is rage. These are rage books, and I started off with the idea of feminine rage, but you know what? Nearly 60% of white women voted for him. Nearly 60% of white women voted against other women, voted against minorities, voted against the LGBTQIA plus population, voted against themselves. And so I'm not going to just center white feminine voices in here. I've made this list as diverse as I am able with the information I have at the moment. I plan on doing more of these lists and more of these books. This list is also 66 books long, so I'm not gonna give all of them today. I filmed this last night, not very well, and then my mic cut out, and I decided today to say, you know what, fuck it, we're gonna redo it. So I'm not gonna make it a goal to get through the whole list. I'm gonna give you a portion of them, and then if you want to see the whole list, you can go to my Instagram. I'll put the link in the description where I have 66 books that I've put together so far, and I've been talking with a couple other people, and we're thinking of doing these types of lists. Sorry, something's poking me. Thinking of doing these types of lists every week. I won't be doing them here every week, but I will be doing them sporadically as I get more. So I built this list through books that I have read, books that were recommended to me when I put out the fact that I was going to put together this list. A bunch of people messaged me with their suggestions. And so I've got some great suggestions. And then I also did some searching through articles from different bookish websites and Goodreads lists and other sources throughout the internet that I have put together a list of rage books. So this is mostly feminine rage, but I'm not calling it feminine rage because I think that is a very white-centered term, and when I do see some of the lists, most of the books are very much written by and about white women. So I'm trying to be a little bit more diverse. I made sure I got some queer voices in here and some other marginalized people, some people of color, and also some books written by men, but they are mostly written by minority men. So, and I think did a very good job of centering women's issues. So let me pull up the list because I had categories and I don't remember what they all were. I called this list Rage with a Side of Quieter Protest. Some of these books are ones that just make you seethe with rage and the character gets some retribution. Others are overtly violent in their retribution. So let's start with the first category, and this is the one that kind of inspired my list, is become the villain they think you are. And I'm gonna embrace this year. So this is, I'm gonna put up the square for this that I made, and I'm gonna talk about a few of them on this list. So because I've talked a lot about a lot of these books before, I'm just gonna pick a couple. Grey Dog, I've talked about a ton. This is from an indie press in Canada. This is queer historical horror. Do check out content warnings. There is animal death in here and pretty gory, and also a very gory description of a miscarriage. But all of these have this theme, so I'm not going to go in depth on the synopsis in the sake of time. Second book, Iron Widow by Jiren J. Zhao. This one is a YA. I did a whole long video on this because I didn't think I would like it, and I ended up loving it. I think it actually deals with the topics very, very well. I'm gonna put right here now, because I forgot to say it in the beginning, this is political. All these books are political. All books are political. And a lot of these are gonna be like smash the government type books. And we do have a lot of that in this one. Iron Widow, I think, is great for feminine rage. I've been told, personally, and people tell me on my video, I don't like that book. It lacks nuance. I don't give a fuck. Not everything needs to be not everything needs to be full of nuance. It's also a YA book. It doesn't hand you things on a platter, but it doesn't pull punches. It does not pull punches. Very much she is willing to do whatever she can to get the result that she wants, and she doesn't care if that destroys her body along the way. And very satisfying as you go through. I loved that she had consequences. This also highlights a polyamorous relationship with queer characters as well, so definitely worth it. Morgan is My Name is an Arthurian retelling. It wasn't my favorite, but I do think it has some merit being on this list. This is the first part of the story from the perspective of Morgan and Morgan Le Fay, who becomes the villain. So this is telling her story from the time she's a teenager to the time she's in her early 20s. When I first read this, I saw that it was touted on Audible, because it was in the free section, as the feminist King Arthur retelling. And I was like, hold up, isn't the feminist King Arthur retelling The Mists of Avalon? The Mists of Avalon was the feminist King Arthur retelling. So I read this and the first book, because The Mists of Avalon is divided into books. I read the first book of The Mist of Avalon, and the timeline matches up very closely. Neither of these, in my opinion, are actually feminist. They're just from a female perspective. There's a lot of infighting between women in both of these, and I'm not a big fan of that. The Mist of Avalon is actually pretty bad about being very not like other girls, and Morgan is My Name does that a little bit as well. The Mists of Avalon actually is not necessarily ragey, but is a take on a suppressed religion. It actually gives it not necessarily from a female perspective, but from a pagan perspective. And I liked it for that aspect of it. Both have their problems. Marion Zimmer Bradley in herself is an author I would not recommend. Do not buy these books new unless you are buying them digitally. If you're buying them digitally, they go to a charity. Marion Zimmer Bradley is a horrible person. If you buy the books new, the money goes to her estate. She's no longer around. Do not buy them new. Buy them either digitally or used. And you can look up why she's a problem. The Bone Witch is by Rin Chapeko. Rin Chapeko is a non-binary author, and they have a lot of this type of story in the spaces. So I'm gonna recommend another Rin Chapeko as well, but I honestly think you can't necessarily go wrong with some feminine rage with any of the Rin Chapeko books. Maybe Silver Under Nightfall and Court of Wanderers don't necessarily have a lot of feminine rage, but there is a lot of the system is fucked up and anti-colonialism in all of their books. So I do recommend, as a general author, Rin Chapeko. The Bone Witch follows a young woman who finds out she has magical powers, but instead of having them be elemental based, she's a necromancer, and therefore she's kind of feared. And she decides she's going to change the fucking system because necromancers get basically used up until all of their energy is drained from them so that they can save the kingdom while also being persecuted for having the ability to go bad, essentially. So this is a series. It is YA, but I really liked this one as well. Red Sister, I'm not super familiar with, but this is an assassin story. And it's a woman who has to come to terms with her demons and become an assassin. I have not read this one, but this was recommended to me by, I don't give a fantasy funk. I can't remember who recommended Morgan Is My Name to me, but that was a recommended one, but I have read it. Okay, so my next category, I'll put all 6 up here, is You Could Always Kill Them. I like this category too. This one is where I had a little bit more kind of pulling in some different stories. They're not necessarily feminine rage, but justified rage, especially looking at Ring Shout. There is some feminine rage in there, but there is also just an oppressing of people. Ring Shout, if you're not aware, by P. Gilly Clarke, is, because I know this has been talked about a lot, this is a novella. It's actually really short. I've heard the audio is really good. I read this one physically. This is about these women in around the Birth of a Nation video, because it deals with that video. I can't remember what era that is, but it's early Americana. Are fighting white sheeted monsters, as shows on the cover. These are actual monsters from another dimension. We're getting some cosmic horror. It's really dark. It's kind of gruesome, but it's very satisfying. And I think the characters in here are very diverse in their personalities, which makes the story very interesting to follow. P. Gilly Clarke, I have not read anything from him that I dislike, and I think in general a lot of his works are pretty good for dealing with issues that women have to deal with in society, and also that intersectionality of race and femininity. Master of Jinn is a really good one too. It's not necessarily feminine rage, but it is a really good one about being a woman in a society. The Rinchipeko I have is a retelling of a Japanese myth-ish. It's inspired by the myth. I guess it's not a retelling. It's inspired by the myth. And it's this ghost who has spent years basically getting her retribution on really shitty men. Audiobook for that one is very well done, and I really liked it. It's short too, and it is YA, so it's not super disgusting in the horror, which I think is a benefit for some people who aren't necessarily comfortable with like over-the-top horror. Is YA horror can be a little gentler in the type of imagery you're getting compared to some of the other horror. The Eyes Are the Best Part I have not read, but this is a woman who becomes obsessed with eyeballs and the idea of killing. So I've heard very good things. It's been very popular lately. Mayfly, Another Giant Eyeball. This is essentially a woman who she works for Disney as Elsa at the parks, and she just really likes to kill people, and this one's fucked up. I will not deny this one is fucked up, but in an enjoyable way. And if you don't need happy endings in your books, Mayfly. They Never Learn, I guess, follows. I have not read this one. This was recommended to me by, I can't remember who, but I can't remember her handle. But this was by, I know, I see it. I will put her name up. She reads a lot of books and has always got something from KU that she's talking about. So if you want to give her a follow, she's fantastic. They Never Learn by Lane Fargo. This is a English professor who every year picks the worst man on campus and just takes him out. So Mary by Nat Cassidy is, I've not read this one. This is on my list. This is a menopausal woman who starts having these kind of mental break-ish type episodes where she's not quite sure what's happening. She's getting hallucinations, and the doctor basically tells her it's because you're perimenopausal. So figure it out. And things get a little out of control from there. So on my list. All right. Kill Your Abusers is my next category. This one was fun too. All of these actually, each of these contain books that I really liked. So The Haunting of Velkwood by Gwendolyn Keist. I just read this at the beginning of this year as an ARC, and I really enjoyed it. this one does deal with a lot of themes of, so all of these obviously deal with themes of abuse, and this is both sexual abuse, partner abuse, parental abuse. So be careful with this one if you have problems with it. This is queer, it is sapphic, and it is essentially, it's kind of paranormal in the way that there's this cul-de-sac where there's almost like a bubble around it, and nobody can enter it except for these 3 women who were all friends in their 20s, and now they're in their 40s, and it's a going back to deal with the past story. Carrie by Stephen King, a classic, his OG work. This is the only Stephen King that makes an appearance on here. You could also put in Rose Madder here, Lisey's story, The Song of Susanna in some ways. There's lots of different Stephen King female characters that hit this, but I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to highlight white voices completely, and also white men, but I do think Carrie is a satisfying read, and it's short compared to a lot of his other works. If you see that shelf with those big books, Carrie is a lot shorter. This is about a girl who gets her first period, and that exacerbates her mother's abuse on her, because her mother is so hyper-religious that she thinks that Carrie's getting her period because she's not pure anymore. And so her abuse on her gets more extreme. She's always been bullied at school. She gets bullied even more because, of course, it starts at school. She doesn't know what it is. She thinks she's dying because her mom they don't talk about those things in that family. And coming from a family that wasn't that extreme but also did not talk about these things, it was very for me reading it. And so that's kind of why it had to go on this list for me. There is a lot of dealing with bullies and how you fit in society. This is also a getting retribution. If you don't want to read Stephen King, but you want to read this story, Tiffany D. Jackson did a retelling of it that focuses on a young biracial woman in Georgia, a young girl, not a young woman, she's like 16, in Georgia, and it's the same story, but this time it's her father, and not only is he super like religious, he has these ideals of the 1950s, and he's also really racist, and he doesn't want anyone to know that his daughter is Black. So he straightens her hair and makes her dress in ways that make her fit in the 1950s and be proper and all of those things. But one day she gets caught in the rain and her hair curls up and out, and everyone knows that she has been hiding her ethnicity, and things happen from there. Definitely a good one. It's a YA retelling of this, so not as... I honestly think Carrie could be a YA, so I'm not gonna... Anyway, also a really good one. I do have The Weight of Blood further down in another list, but I wanted to highlight it here as well. The Violence by Delilah S. Dawson. I have not read this one. I had not heard of this one until I was looking, and this one came up as... This is a pandemic one, but the pandemic makes everybody really violent, and that gives our main character an excuse to kill her abusive husband. That's pretty much what I got from the synopsis. So, yeah. The Bandit Queens by Harini Shroff is one I saw talked about last year. This is following a woman whose husband walks away and doesn't come back. And so then everyone in the community thinks that she murdered him and is a self-made widow. And so women start going to her to ask for help to get rid of their husbands. And it becomes this whole thing. I guess this one is a little comedic in its telling and in the way the story wraps up, but is kind of a fun, justifiable jaunt. The Crane Husband by Kelly Barnhill follows a young girl who's a teenager and her little brother. Their mother is neglectful, and she always brings home men. She brings home one night a giant crane. And it's not clear whether the mother sees him as a crane or a human, but she gets into a relationship with him, and this crane is super abusive, and our main character has to do something about it. I have problems with this one, but they're not that important. It's just, I think this one does the thing where it makes a female character sacrifice their emotional and mental well-being for a younger sibling, and it's then never addresses that. So, yeah. A Dowry of Blood. Everyone was reading this last month, so if you haven't heard about it, I'm be surprised. It's also been read a ton. I think I heard about it on here from someone. I did this on audio, and it's a great audio experience. S.T. Gibson. uses the second person a lot in here, and this is kind of inspired by Dracula's Brides. We're doing a polyamory relationship. We have a woman who is bisexual at the very least, and if not, just realizing that she's not necessarily bisexual, she's just really into women instead. She's basically getting rid of her abusive partner and dealing with the fallout from that. Okay, the next one is I Support Women's Wrongs. I have actually not read any books in this category, so I'm going to keep it very short, but I do like that the top two in the bottom left, are very similar cover styles, and they all relate to eating, and I kind of love that. A Certain Hunger is, what is it? That's a woman who is a food writer, blogger, and she's a food writer, blogger, and I can't remember the rest of it, and I'm not going to look it up, but it is definitely I Support Women's Wrongs. Hungerstone this one's not coming out until February 2025, and the Lost in Fictional Spaces, she told me about this. She said she's been obsessed with it since she read The Ark. It is a Carmilla retelling, but in kind of modern day, I believe, or later at least than Carmilla, and longer. So I'm hyped for that one. I want to check that one out. And that cover, I love that cover. Bunny by Mona Awad is women's cults in a school. So I know that Books and Lala loves it. I've seen it on her channel a ton. And this, I pulled off the Goodreads list. And then Woman Eating, I believe Clockwork Reader has talked about this one quite a bit. I think that's where I first saw it. This is vampires. This is a woman who, she just really wants to eat different food, but she's a vampire. She's also a little obsessed with humans, and then she's got to like reconcile all that. Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn is a thriller. It's maybe like the thriller that everybody talks about. It's like over 10 years old now, and I have never read it or watched the movie, so I do know it's like this woman goes missing, and then her husband is like kind of raked over the coals for it, and she's maybe manipulating the situation. Boy Parts by Eliza Clark. Apparently this one came out like 3 years ago, but everyone's just talking about it recently. Willow Talks Books did a whole video about this that I watched but can't remember right now. This is a photographer who pulls men who are not conventionally attractive off the street and does like boudoir style pictures of them, and then there's like some conflict with her best friend, and I'm guessing it gets violent, so because it is a horror. I want to read it, but I've heard mixed things. So this is my other favorite category, and I'm actually reading one of the books off this one. So this is Rebel Against a Tyrannical System. Here's where with fantasy hits. Fantasy is so great for this, and there are so many of these stories that maybe don't center just women, but have women characters. So I tried to pick ones where the main character is a woman, and got really lucky, and I got the Sapphic Trifecta in here. So let's talk about that first. So the Sapphic Trifecta is these three yellow ones: The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke, The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri, and She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. These books apparently all came out within a very short amount of time. They're all yellow, they're all down with the government, and they're all sapphic. So that's the gist of these. I am currently reading The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke. I picked it up on audio, and the audio is absolutely fantastic. The only reason I didn't pick this one up physically, because I really wanted to go to the library and get it, is that I am trying to not pick up any more physical or digital books that did not come from my shelf or the like couple of Kindle books that I have for the rest of the year, because I keep buying and not reading, and then going, ooh, shiny at the library, and reading library books. Definitely read library books. Please read library books. But I'm just trying to finish up the books that I bought secondhand, so if they're bad, I can get them off my shelf and move on. So that's the only reason I picked this up on audio. But the audio for this is amazing. The narrator, I'll put her name here, is so good. So good. Hard recommend on this one on audio, and just in general, the book is so good. This deals with class, this deals with race, this deals with colonialism, this deals with exploitation, this deals with slavery and stealing children to use them as soldiers, and a woman who has to reconcile the fact that she was raised, taken away from her culture, from her family, from her country, raised by another country, as a pawn in war to be sacrificed on the front lines, to be cannon fodder, and her reconciling that that happened to her when she was so young that she knows no other way of life. So I'm obsessed. I'm 50% in. I only picked it up yesterday, and I've been just like eating the shit out of this. I had to stop because I was like, I need to go record. Like, but I just couldn't sit there and finish this book. So fantastic. The Jasmine Throne is, what is that one? That is, oh gosh, I can't remember the Jasmine Throne or She Who Became the Sun, like which one was which, but again, women against the government. So let me pause real quick and pull up the Jasmine Throne for you, because I do know that Literature Science Alliance has been talking about this series a lot because the next book comes out Tuesday. So check out her channel for that. So this is a woman who is, it says she's a captive princess and a maidservant in possession of forbidden magic become unlikely allies on a dark journey to save their empire from the princess's traitor brother. That's the short synopsis of that one. And then She Who Became the Sun. She Who Became the Sun is set in China. 1345, China lies under harsh Mongol rule. When a bandit attack orphans 2 children, it is Zhu Changba who succumbs to despair and dies. Desperate to escape her own fated death, the girl uses her brother's identity to enter a monastery as a young male novice. This one apparently has like Mulan vibes. Nat Eats Books on Instagram, she loved this one. She finished it in like a couple days and then got the second one and finished that in a couple days. This is a duology. The others are longer, I believe. The Unbroken is a trilogy, but the third book has not come out yet. It's The Unbroken, The Faithless, and The Sovereign. The Sovereign is supposed to come out in 2025. So if you want to pick up a series that you can almost finish, because the next book is coming out, that is The Unbroken, which is the Magic of the Lost series. Then the Jasmine Throne, the Burning Kingdom series, that is, I believe, a 3-book. Let me check. That's a 3-book. The Lotus Empire is the next book, and that one comes out, as I said, Tuesday. So that's finishing up. And the She Who Became the Sun, which is The Radiant Emperor, is a duology. So any of those. Okay, let's move on. So I get distracted with the Sapphic Trifecta, and The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang is another one. This is a grimdark one. I've read the first chapter of this. This is a woman who essentially has nothing. She is worth nothing to her adoptive parents, and she decides in order to get out of it, she wants to join this magic school or this like military school, but she has to score at like the top of this test, and it's going to be near impossible even if she had started training when she was younger. But she convinces this person to be her mentor, and she is able to do it, and then it goes on from there. So this is where it's to be really grimdark. This does have some pretty nasty trigger warnings, so definitely check those out. The Trader Baru Cormorant is the negative reviews said I didn't want to read about fantasy accounting. So yeah, this is a sapphic one too. This is a very homophobic society, and this one is also a eventually you live long enough to see yourself become the villain tale, apparently. I've not read this, but I really want to. So this one is also a series. And then The Power by Naomi Alderman. This one sounded a little YA when I was reading it. It's essentially like high school girls get like the X-Men style powers, and that changes the world. So that leads us into Fight Against the Patriarchy, where we're not necessarily fighting against an empire, but we're trying to change the world. Or just one person, like just one symbol of the patriarchy. So Who Fears Death by Nadia Korafor. Honestly, Nadia Korafor is one of those other authors that if you want women fighting the system, her books, every single one of them does it. And they range from YA to adult, and they're all this Afrofuturism that's really wonderful. Who Fears Death is also dark as shit. There is a very graphic description of sexual assault in here that I read first thing in the morning and was like, I didn't want to wake up and read that, but here we are. It made me angry and nauseous and cry. So yeah, there are aspects of this book I don't like, but we're following a young girl who discovers her magical powers after the death of her stepfather, and she's fighting in order to get training for her powers, because as a woman she isn't necessarily she has to work harder to get them, if she's allowed to have them, because they think that women as sorcerers is dangerous to the world. So there's also aspects of race and genocide in here. This is inspired by the Sudan genocide, so, which is ongoing. So there is a lot of that in here. Maybe read the author's note first if you can for this one, because I think it's actually really important. Nettle and Bone is a dark fairy tale kind of. T. Kingfisher is a treasure. All of her books will have elements in there that will make you go like, yes, women, and also be like frustrated at the system, but they're not all necessarily like in this category. Nettle and Bone I think fits because it is a woman who has done kind of nothing with her life as the third sister. She like joined a nunnery, but she's not really a nun. She just works with the nuns, and she's lived there her whole life. And then she finds out her sister is going to be married to this man who probably killed her oldest sister and has probably killed other wives. And she's like, I gotta save my sister. So it's a let's go kill the prince, but also not die killing the prince. And it's a journey. It's a backpack fantasy. And it's dark, and it has some really fun things and some really funny things, but also some really sad things. And T. Kingfisher she's a treasure. She's like probably one of my new favorite authors. Night Bitch I've talked about extensively in a review. This is let's turn into a dog to fight the patriarchy, and women always do everything and it's never rewarded. So When Women Were Dragons I have not read, but is set in the 1950s America, and under the extreme stress of being a housewife, women turn into dragons to change the system. The Highland Witch follows a woman called Korag, and we are in, I don't remember what era or what the massacre is called, but it's the MacDonald clan massacre, and this woman has run to the Highlands from England to escape, and she kind of lives on her own up there, and she just has her own life and does her own things. And then she finds out about this massacre that's about to take place and ends up being able to warn the MacDonald clan and get some people out, even though a bunch of people don't make it. So that's not spoilers, that's history. So this is a historical fiction with some magical realism that I really enjoyed. Camp Damascus, in this one, the patriarchy is the church. And all I'm going to say is this deals with a conversion camp, because the synopsis is very short, and I think this book is kind of short, so going into it with just that, this is a girl who lives by a conversion camp and is the most popular conversion camp, and she's under the strict religious oppression. Can I make it through the rest of them? I think we're going to call it there, because that is roughly halfway. Is that halfway? That is halfway. Ish. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 30 more books to tell you about, so I'm going to do that another day. But they're going to include the categories of Rage Against the Machine, The Patriarchy is Destroying Us, above all, Determination, Fight for Your Children, Retribution, and nonfiction. So if you have any books that you really think I should have included on this list, I may have them on the next one, but you're welcome to throw them in the comments, and if I don't have them, you may see them in a future video. I'll put the link to the Instagram post here, and also, if I remember, the links to a few other, but there have been so many good feminine rage posts going around right now that mine is definitely not the only one. It was not the first one. And I am very happy with it, because I do think it's a very extensive list, and I've tried to make it as diverse as possible. The list keeps getting diverse as you go on, and I am doing my best. So I'm just trying to be better than I was yesterday. That is my goal, is to be better every day than I was the day before. And to remind you that reading is inherently political. It is inherently political. If you don't think it is, then you're not reading. So everything we do is political. Media is political. Like, everything is fucking political. So, thanks for sitting with me. I hope you got something on this list. I really love a lot of the books on this list. And I'll see you on Tuesday with maybe a review for The Unbroken by Seal Clark, because I'm loving it. Yeah, I hope you're taking care of yourself. Do something nice for yourself today.